With Enlisted's latest update releasing, there is a lot of new vehicles that I wish to cover, and one of them, with the official release, is the Chi-Ri. This is the Japanese medium tank that has been given to the Japanese that is right before the Ho-Ri, so that's great. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Chi-Ri 2 and what I think of the tank, and of course the history and whatnot. So without further ado, let's get started. Of course, this video has been made possible for the friends at Discord. If you haven't subscribed or joined the Discord, I highly suggest that you do. But that said, let's get started. Starting with the history, the Type 5 Chi-Ri was a Japanese media tank developed during World War II, and this was mainly driven off of the quote-unquote Eastern Front experiences, in which the Japanese Imperial Army sent advisors. The specifications for such vehicles was an increased armor up to 75mm, a weight increase from 20 to 35 tons, the new 75mm gun to replace the old 57mm gun, and the tank was to emphasize quality over quantity in production. The prototype was completed by May 1945 and it featured a few new interesting modifications. These include a weld construction with a modified Chi-To chassis, 8 road wheels per side, an 800 HP V12 gasoline engine, this was a German licensed engine of course, and a main 75mm gun with an automatic reloader, and of course a fixed 37mm gun, and up to 3 7.7 machine guns. And then there was another plan for a Chi-Ri 2 variant with a diesel power that was revisionized. Despite the advanced design and multiple issues that were apparently solved with this design, the shortages and the Allied bombings caused the production to stall. This tank, although managed to be an unarmed prototype, was captured by the Americans. It was then proved at the Arlington Proving Grounds for testing, but then was scrapped in 1952. The project was ultimately abandoned in favor for the more practical Chi-To Type 4 for the Japanese final defense, which thankfully for everyone concerned never ever happened, so that's good. Moving on in terms of the weapon, or should I say in this case tank, the Chi-Ri has a crew of 5, which is actually pretty dang survivable. The armament of a 75mm Type 2 Model 1 cannon means this is the autoloader version, although in-game you can instantly tell that the autoloader is going to be, well, constantly auto-reloading, which isn't the case. Historically, and in War Thunder, this is apparently to be auto-reloading the first 2 rounds, although that has to be confirmed once again. 37mm Type 1 cannon in the hull is a pretty good gun, although once again you're going to be mainly using the 75mm, and of course it does have a 7.7 machine gun, of which there are 3 of them. One of them is placed in the worst place possible, so that's that. In terms of the whole armor, you have a 75mm in the front, 35 on the side, 35 on the back, 20 on the top. In terms of the turret, you have 75 on the front, 50 on the side, 50 on the back, and 20 on the top. The engine power is 468 horsepower at 500 RPM and has a weight of 41 tons. That said, without further ado, let's move on to the verdict, because as of right now, although this tank is very new and very unique, there has to be some discretion. And the first thing we have to talk about the discretion is the fact that this thing is unbearably bad when it comes to maneuverability. Sure, when you go straight, it does a pretty good job, but the issue with this tank, and this is why it needs to be mentioned now, is the issue with the turning. You cannot possibly turn at this without stopping the tank and or turning, because if you turn while you go forward, what's going to happen is that you're forced to essentially kind of stop with the tank, which is terrible if you want to make sharp turns. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that you cannot make sharp turns. The best way to turn and turn successfully is to stop the tank, which is a bad idea, and then start turning, and even that is a bad idea because the turn speed on this thing is pretty dang terrible. That said, the moving forward and back is actually pretty good. It is kind of hard to move with the turn speed, like I said, and while we're at it, everything else is pretty lackluster. For example, the whole armor, although isn't bad in comparison to any other Japanese tank, against any American tank with, well, that is essentially a jumbo or above, you're pretty much going to be either one-shotted or you're pretty much going to be penetrated very easily, especially with the 75 front. So it is not going to be a massive surprise. That said, the main point that I'm trying to bring up to it is that this tank is really reliant on its gun. The 75mm in the turret, of course, is actually a pretty good gun. Like I said, despite the gun being a quote-unquote auto-reloader for the first 2 rounds, the auto-reloader is apparently replaced with a full auto-reload for every single round, which is insane, because now the shot apparently reloads in around 2 to 3 seconds, so that is amazing. Essentially what I'm trying to say to you is that this gun is very, very good. It fires very quickly, and if you're wondering the penetration, it's actually not bad. Although, once I say penetration, it has a harder time against the jumbos than the Pershing, so be careful with that. And yet, of course, we haven't even tried to face or use this against the Super Pershing, which I do not think it can penetrate. This tank is a stationary anti-infantry tank that can potentially move in and move out, but not turn. And this has practically no armor against, well, essentially heavy tanks, such as anything above a jumbo, so that's great. Overall, this is my verdict. I honestly do think this is a good addition for Japan, but if you're using this as the anti-tank, then you're doing something wrong. Use the bigger brother, which is the Ho-Ri, which is actually, if you want to know, a prototype from this tank, so that's great. The Ho-Ri is much better at taking out tanks as it's supposed to. The Chi-Ri has less armor, but has a very fast-firing gun, and mobility for both tanks arguably suck, but I would argue that the Chi-Ri is slightly faster. So that's that. Overall, have a great day, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Discord, and I'll see you in the next one.